Hey, UMD. Oh, we have a great chapter here. You are going to love what happens in this chapter. In chapter 21, Stars Beneath Our Feet. Lally and Big Rose are going to go actually all around Manhattan, which is that island in the middle of New York City. Then they're also going to meet Harp and Gully. Do you remember those boys from the beginning? There's a big problem that happens with them. Oh, oops, there's a problem, and then there's a response to that problem. And I want you to be noticing, how does Lally get help to the problem that happens with Harp and Gully? All right, here we go. We're going to keep adding to our ideas today about the answer to the question, can people change? I know I was reading the chapter with Keyshawn last week, and he said, yes, people can change. And I think you probably all saw that Lally and Rose, they've started to get along better. So it's starting to show us that, yeah, there's evidence in this story that people can change. There'll also be questions on character motivation, why characters do what they do, and thinking about connections we're making to our own life, but also connections within the story. Okay, chapter 21. It wasn't as chilly as it had been. I was glad because we'd probably be spending most of the morning and afternoon outside. I probably would have overslept, but the sound of a crowing had raised me up early. I guess that skinny red chicken was still running around St. Nick. Do you remember? What is this chicken? You make a connection from the last chapter or 2 chapters ago? Remember it was in that box, and they picked up the box and the chicken walked out in front of the building? Weird. We still don't know where it came from, but that's the chicken. His crowing at the break of dawn had woke Ma up too. Like most, she would be working the whole day in Brooklyn. I like this because with her being gone all Saturday, I could usually do I wanted without her telling me not to. Her day at work was my day to explore. Somebody groaned behind me. I turned to watch the Spanish dude near a wall with his knees bent, staring off into space. Every now and then, he would act like he would need to sit down, but then he would just stay standing, dazed. He was in his world, built out of... Who knew how long he'd be there like that, not knowing who he was? I was on the corner of 125th and Lexington. This place had to be the most psycho corner in all of New York. It had to be. Daddy Rushpaul had told me that the reason this corner was so nuts was that all different types of people met here. Added on to the ex-cons living in halfway houses around the way, there were addicts who used the drug clinics nearby. Also, there were city buses that stopped at this corner to take people to the homeless. So all these unlucky people mixed up is what made this place kind of... Yo, Youngblood, somebody called. Talking to you, brother. I met eyes with this old dude wearing an old stained blue... Yeah, it was warmer. Sorry, that little thing always gets my way today than it had been. But not enough to just be wearing an old dirty windbreaker. It must have been about 40 degrees. What's up? I said to the dude. My eyes started scanning the crowds of the people rushing past. Most of them were racing down in the subway, trying to get somewhere else. Spare $1? Windbreaker asked me. I'm trying to buy a... I handed him the change in my pocket with, that's all I got. Youngblood, God bless you, he then bowed and skidded off. Again, I peeped at the time on my phone. It was way past 10 a.m. I was getting tired of I stashed my phone in the back pocket of my jeans. Youngblood, somebody called out. For a second, I thought it was old windbreaker back for some coffee money. But after thinking that for a second, my brain realized it couldn't have been him back. This new voice was young. I turned toward the voice and that heavy stone right back into my heart. I was staring at that heart dude right in the face. One of the older boys who had been following me since Eve. Now, connection. What happened with these boys before? Do you remember? Pause the video and turn and talk to someone. Good. I hope you remember that these boys were the guys who were like chasing after him when he was walking down 125th looking for Christmas presents. Back to the text. I didn't say nothing, but turned to run. Billy was standing right in my way, though. Out of nowhere, he mean mugged me, then glanced at all the people around us. Come here, little man, Billy said to me, almost. Stink breath was all up in my face. He had had an egg sandwich for breakfast, I could tell. The two boys grabbed an arm each and toted me around the corner to 124th Street. I started kicking. There weren't as many people here, almost nobody this Saturday. Oh my gosh, they grabbed him up. You look scared, little man, Billy told me. He shoved me over to Harp, who grabbed me by my backpack before I could take off. What's your name? I didn't say nothing. We know who you is, Lollipop, Harp said into my ear. He made a popping sound with his lips. You hang with the Dominicans over in St. Nick. What are you doing over here on the east side this morning? On 125th, Goliath said. Now remember, 125th is like a huge street. You guys have seen it in many different texts, lots of pictures. I've talked to you a lot about 125th Street. It's a huge street. It's like kind of like way busier than Alabama Avenue. There's tons of people, always, tons of shops. You a quiet little mouse, Harp said. Lily cracked a smile. You wandered onto this part of East 125th? You gotta pay the lollipop, he said. You know the rules. He stepped closer. Give me that. I didn't move, and Gully's eyes got all... He wasn't mad. It seemed like he wasn't sure if I had... That phone in your back pocket, Gully said. Harper and me could just grab it, but we want you to give it to us as a gift. We don't want there to be no... Good, that's a long word, misunderstanding about it. It's just like you giving us your phone because we are really, really tight. Best friends, Harp whispered. I could feel in my ears. I knew they was going to have my phone. That wasn't really what made me sizzle. The sad, angry thing that was there was nothing I could do to stop them. There were two of them. They were both bigger. Like Ma always said, I had skinny boy. Gully stuck his finger in my face. Give it up, lollipop. I turned away, and I saw Big Rose stomp around the corner. Lips tucked, she was skipping in that way she always does, real fast so that her big head bobs in the air every time she took a step. With both hands, she was a plastic lunchbox against her chest. I heard her say, when you die, they bury you. Looking confused, Harps glanced at her. Rose was moving so fast toward me and the boys that I didn't even have time to warn her to hold back. I didn't want her to get hurt. Right after that thought blew through my brain cells, I watched Rose raise her lunchbox above her head and then blop! She had whopped Gully so hard on the back of his head that her lunchbox broke in two. Food went flying out. Gully stumbled forward onto me, and we both tumbled to the... I scraped my hand, trying to keep from falling. By the time I looked up at Rose and Harp, I saw him away from her, trying to get some between his head and her heavy fist. She was... That might be a new word to you. Good. Pummeling. That means hitting hard over and over. She's pummeling his head, hitting it over and over, like it was a jackhammer breaking. One fist after another fist flew out and landed on Harp's head, eye, nose, or neck before he had any chance to. Not only was Big Rose taller than both Harp and Gully, but she carried more weight on her than those who were probably 2 years. I jumped up and lunged forward toward Harp. Leaving his friends, Gully still dazed on the sidewalk, Harp took off running east on 124th Street. Rose threw her red delicious apple after him as he ran. It just missed his head. How did Big Rose help Lally here? This is a question you're going to answer in your assignment, so check out where I made some red underlines. All this is evidence, I think, for how you could answer that question. How did Big Rose help Lally? Pause the video right now and turn and tell someone near you or think about it. Use the text. You could say, in the text it says, she whopped Gully so hard on the back of his head. This shows that Big Rose helped defend Lally against the boys. Let's keep going. Back to the text. Both of us turned to glare down at Gully, who was trying to stand. Before I could say anything, Rose ran at him with the hard metal that had also been flung out of her broken lunchbox. She didn't smack him with it, but stood there, waiting. Gully stumbled backward out of her reach. His eyes, again, just like they had narrowed at me before, right after I'd to hand him my phone. He looked like he didn't understand how this had happened to him, how this girl had smashed out him and his roughneck partner. For a second, I thought he forgot how to speak until he unloaded the longest stretch of words at Rose that I'd ever heard anybody gush out. Tore off means to run away quickly. Back into the text. Rose let out and raised her thermos higher above her head, like she was about to dunk it against Gully's. Still cursing, Gully tore off in the opposite direction. Oh, sorry, here's tore off, my bad. Tore off means to run away quickly, so I know it's kind of a weird phrase. It's like you think tear off, like to peel something off of something. Well, tore off or tear off also means to run away fast. Back to the text. Still cursing, Gully tore off in the opposite direction. When Rose tried to follow, I was just able to hold her back. After she had finished puffing, we picked up what was left of her lunch off the street and made it back to the subway at 125th and Lux. Setting change. Remember those 3 dots? Wow. So think, how did Big Rose help Lally there? Okay, back to the text. The McDonald's restaurant we went in Midtown Manhattan for lunch was so crowded we had to locate a corner booth on the 2nd floor upstairs. I was glad because on the 2nd floor you could watch all the people racing and rushing down below. Rose wasn't tired, but I was. We had spent most of the afternoon hunting all around Midtown for famous buildings that were in my architect's book. I treated Rose to lunch. That means he paid. That's nice. All she wanted was chicken nuggets and apple slices. I guess it was my fault that she had to wreck her own lunch by Gully upside the head with it. That boy pointed in your face, she told me. He shouldn't do that. I decided never to stick my finger in her face. This Rose was okay, I thought. Connection. We answered this question last week, but I want you to keep adding evidence. How are Lally and Big Rose changing? What evidence do you see right here? How does Lally think of her now? I hope you said, oh, because in the text it says that Lally actually thinks she's okay now. They're like friends. He brought her lunch. She saved him from 2 mean boys. About to beat him up and take his phone. Back to the text. We both sat up there eating and looking out. I took a chew off my double and reached for my phone. I had bagged pictures of all the different buildings Rose and me had spotted. Here's the Chippendale building, I said, showing her. That was the first one we found, designed by Philip Johnson and John Burgee. She nodded and spoke with mashed up chicken in her mouth. 55th and Madison. I thumbed a page in my book. It says it's nicknamed the Chippendale because it looks like a piece of... Huh. What? Rose asked. That's what it says. The top of the building is built like the top of an old cabinet. Oh, interesting. I'm going to show you a picture of that in a second. We went on like that for a while, eating and talking about what we had seen that day. My favorite was the Chrysler To me, it was a building from another planet. Roses was some building we had explored on 300 West 57th. Took me a minute to figure out she had meant the Hearst building. It was weird and shiny. Well, the top was. The bottom was old. Let me show you pictures of those. They're pretty cool. I've seen them all in New York City. Hopefully you have or will someday too. That is the Chippendale building. It looks like an old cabinet on the top. This is the Chrysler building. Some people mistake that for the Empire State Building because it's really close. It's on 34th Street, but it's so pretty, especially lit up at night. Chrysler building. And then this is that Hearst building. It's old stone on the bottom, but then the top, it looks like real fancy and almost futuristic looking. That's the Hearst building. Cool. Rose was always so exact in how she talked. When she talked about a building, she didn't say, the big one, like a tube of lipstick. Remember the lipstick building from last time? Instead, she would say, the oval-shaped reddish-orange one at 53rd and 3rd Avenue. This girl was, but that's nothing new. I was a little different too. I had come to realize over the past few months. I mean, how many grown kids spend all their free time building Lego cities in dusty old storage rooms? Hey, Rose, I started. What makes you so... She shrugged and slid my book across the table toward herself. I said, you like to be by yourself so much. You got a solid memory too. Real solid. Is that because you're homeschooled? You're going to build all those buildings we saw today in our city room? Stop right there. I want you to think about this question. What is Lally's motivation in saying him and Big Rose are different? Remember, motivation means why do characters do what they do? Why did he say that? Why does he think they're different? What evidence right here tells you about that? Why he thinks they're different? What's different about her? What's different about him? Use the red lines as evidence to help you. Here we go. Let's keep going back to the text. She nodded, eyes down in the book. All that from memory, I asked. She nodded again, flipping a page. I whistled. I couldn't do that, man. That's why I took pictures. I sipped out the last of my orange drink. I noticed the sound of the straw slurping made her frown, so I cut it out. Rose said, still frowning, I'm not autistic. Her head jerked toward the sound of a chair leg screeching across the floor. An Asian family that had been sitting next to us was leaving. I'm not autistic, she said again. I know. You ain't got no definition, I said. She nodded and turned a page without meeting eyes with me. I don't know if you know what autistic means, but autistic is like a way to describe some people's personalities. Sometimes it can make them act a little different than you might normally see someone acting, but there are some, so you may have heard of people being autistic before. It's kind of like a different way of learning and thinking and talking. But she says she's not interesting. She just brought that up on her own. He didn't ask about it. Okay, back to the text. Well, I always feel different from everybody else, I said. It gets worse the more old I get, I think. Just between you and me, I wasn't going to do good. I wasn't doing too good I hated the holidays. I felt like I was going to die. Rose glanced at me and asked, why were you going to die? She grinned and dove back into the book. I peeked around to see if anybody was listening. Everybody else was all in their own worlds. Two black women dressed in short skirts sat down where the Asians had sat. I just started to think about doing bad stuff. Like you. Last October on Halloween, my brother Jermaine, I told Rose. Actually, he didn't just die. Some thug shot him up in the Bronx. I haven't found him yet. The dude that shot my brother, but I know he's still out there. Connection. What did you just learn about Jermaine's death? You just learned a little bit more evidence and information about it? Yeah, we didn't really know that a guy shot him and that he got, he was free still, but they didn't find him. That's new. Back to the text. On the street below, some fat cop was giving some delivery van a ticket. The driver was trying to talk his way out of it. The cop just walked away. I sighed. Storage room. Harmony. Working on two cities. It helps. I still think about doing bad things. Not completely better, but I feel like I could be better. I'm doing better. I'm better, Rose said, without taking her eyes off a pattern of architecture. She said, August 16th, my mother jumped from the top of the building, 9900. Oh man, I said. All the buildings in St. Nick were 14 stories high. I knew firsthand from sitting on top of mine flying paper planes. Rose, man, I'm sorry. I'm better, she said again. Thought back to last summer and remembered what she was talking about. At first, the cops had tried to keep the jumper's name quiet, but soon everybody was talking about the lady who. We're going to pause right here because I want you to know that this is a question that I'm going to ask at the end. How are they really alike? What did we just learn about both Lally and Rose that are making them even more alike now? Back to the text. But soon everybody was talking about the lady who jumped. I couldn't remember her name. Desiree Green, Rose said. Yeah, I remember Rose. Oh, man. Rose's last name was different, probably her father's last name. And mostly her grandmother had raised her, she told me, since her own mother had never been. I remembered all that and everybody in St. Nick being so sad about it. The woman killing herself like that right in our. Rose said her mother didn't grow up in St. Nick and never really visited Rose's grandmother, Betty, much. Man! Then, out of nowhere, she started to kick her leg back and forth. With her eyes on the floor, she told me, Rosamond, when you die, they bury you. But your soul flies to the. Her leg stopped. She stared back into my book. I didn't know what she had meant. What she had said wasn't in the book. She had said the same stuff to Harp and Gully this morning. I sat there watching her read until she said she had to go home. Her gran would get worried. As we headed toward the subway to go back up to Harlem, I scoped out the tall midtown skyscrapers one last time. The idea of falling from or jumping from the roof of my own building used to scare me. I couldn't help but think about what it would be like to fall from the top of one of these mile-high skyscrapers here, down toward these hard concrete sidewalks below. I wondered if that was what Rose was thinking about when she had built her own tiny version of the same building her mother had dove off of. Rose's Lego buildings were like tombstones, I realized. Oh, isn't this like so sad? But I really love the way he writes here. I'm going to read that last line again. I wondered if that, or the last paragraph. I wondered if that was what Rose was thinking about when she built her own tiny version of the same buildings her mother had dove off of. Rose's Lego buildings were like tombstones, I realized. Tombstones like in a graveyard. A plastic cemetery of tiny skyscrapers. Whoa, there's so much great writing in those last few paragraphs. But I especially want to focus on this line here. What she said, it's kind of eerie. Rosamond, when you die, they bury you, but your soul flies to the stars. Connection. Why does Big Rose say this now as she did in the beginning of the chapter? Remember in the beginning of the chapter who she said it to? Yeah, she said it to the boys. Remember right before she beat them up? She said, when she ran up to them with her lunchbox, when you die, they bury you. And now here at the end, she adds something to it that says, when you die, they bury you, but your soul flies to the stars. I'm going to show you an answer. I'm going to write a little bit about that. All right, so today's your last official lesson of, or like in school before summer lesson time. I'm going to keep reading the chapters and giving you videos about it. But I really want you to focus on writing your best phrase questions today, okay? Remember, I know it's hard, like the Tough Mudder I did many years ago, but you can do it. So I'm going to prove it by showing you how quickly I can answer this question right now. All right, here we go. So, question is, why does Big Rose say this now as she did in the beginning of the chapter? Here I go. So, oops. Oh, I forgot. I'm going to have to close out of this. Okay, here we go. So, first things first. R, restate the question. Why does Big Rose say this now as she did in the beginning of the chapter? Big Rose says, maybe I should write what she says. When you die, they bury you, but your soul flies to the stars. When you die, they bury you, but your soul flies to the stars. That's what she says. So I'm going to put a quotation mark there to show that's the end of what she said. Big Rose says, when you die, they bury you, but your soul flies to the stars because, oh no, I have to say that she did it in the beginning of the chapter. At the beginning and the end of the chapter, because, well, I feel like at first it's because she's kind of like threatening the boys, but at the end, whose soul do you think she's thinking about that flew to the stars? Her mom, probably, right? Okay, so she's using the same line, but in two totally different ways. At the beginning and the end of the chapter, because at first she is trying to threaten, I'm going to use their names, Harp and Gully, capital for both. She was trying to threaten Harp and Gully, but then at the end, she might be talking about her mom. Okay, now let me go back in the text and see where I can find proof that she was probably talking about her mom right there. Let's see. So then out of nowhere, see how it helps that I have the red line underlined? She started to kick her leg back and forth with her eyes on the floor. She told me, Rosamond, when you die, they bury you, but your soul flies to the stars. Her leg stopped. She stared back into the book. I didn't know what she meant. What she had said wasn't in the book. She had said that same stuff to Harp and Gully. I sat there watching her read until she said she had to go home. Her gran would get worried. How do I know she was talking about her mom there? Maybe I need to go back a little bit. Oh yeah, right here. Right here she says that she was talking about her mom, that her mom died jumping off the building. Okay, there we go. August 16th, my mother jumped from the top of the building. Okay, let me go back to my answer. In the text, it says that Rose told Lally on August 16th, my mom jumped. Wait, let me go back and make sure I'm saying that right. My mother jumped from the top of the building. My mother jumped from the top of the building. I'm going to put dot, 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 because that sentence isn't in there, but I don't really need to put the building number. On August 16th, my mother jumped from the top of the building. Now I've got R, restate, answer the question. I'm citing evidence from the text to prove that now she's talking about her mom when she said, when you die, they bury you, but your soul flies to the stars. Now I got to just explain why that evidence proves my answer. How do I know that she's talking about burying you, someone, but the soul flying to the stars? So this shows that Big Rose probably imagines that even though her mom was buried, her soul was in the stars. And I want to add how that feels. Which feels better? Let me make sure I got everything I want to say. Always go back and reread. Figaro says when you die, they bury you, but your soul flies to the stars at the beginning and the end of the chapter because at first she is trying to threaten Harp and Gully, but then at the end she might be talking about her mom. In the text it says that Rose told Lally, on August 16th, my mother jumped from the top of the building. This shows that Big Rose probably imagines that even though her mom was buried, her soul was in the stars, which feels better. Okay, so is my writing organized? Yes, I have complete sentences. I went through R, A, C, and E. Do I have proof to my answer? Yes, I used words straight from the text. Next, complete sentences with periods and capital letters? Yes, I have 3 complete sentences here. All right, everybody, remember there's a new Cash App prize for the people who answer each question with 3 complete sentences using race. If you get those 5 full points, you also get the Cash App prize. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that chapter, and I can't wait to read your responses. Bye.